Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni miliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. We have two great guests today. In a little bit, Amalia Huffman will be here to celebrate Marsha Munching. But first, we'll be speaking to Stephen Joseph about his brand new picture book, Snoodles, Kadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Chad? Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted to have you back on. Please tell us all about Snoodles, Kadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles.
Well, this is a book, I guess, somewhat inspired by the pandemic, where, kids wearing masks all the time and not interacting the way they're doing. And this was written earlier last year. I keep forgetting which year it is, but it was last year when, kids were still, like some people, home learning. And you hear like people wearing masks, not wearing masks, having vaccines, not vaccines. So I thought I'd make a story up instead of like talking about a pandemic, which is not so much fun. I want to have this uplifting story about the world where everybody was cranky. I kind of write about crankiness all the time. That's what I do. So, but people were cranky because they were driving around in krautmobiles, which ran on sauerkraut, and everybody ended up smelling like sauerkraut, and flowers smelled like sauerkraut, and it's just like no one was. It was just a very sauerkrauting smell. If you go to it just was terrible. But then Herbie Snoodleman invented the Snoodle, which ran on noodles, and it was great. You just you fill up your Snoodle with noodles, and you come home, and then you press a button, and you have a big bowl of noodles ready for the family. And everybody was really, really happy. So, and then things happen afterwards that, little like caper and stuff like that. So it's a fun book.
Yeah, I love that. And I tell you, I would be in heaven if I could drive around in a vehicle that was powered by noodles, and then not only that, but gave me a big bowl of noodles when I was finished.
Yeah. I mean, I look at this and I think about it's about creativity. That's really the big piece that if we try to be creative, not just looking at our problems and getting this down, but how do we be creative and make the world a better place. So, I actually fantasized about let's have a car that just runs on noodles and it would be a different world.
Yeah. I love that you wrote this book to inspire kids to be creative and innovative, because I think that that's something, that we're forgetting. We're living in a time where, who'd have thought that we would have been able to create a vaccine in the short period of time that we did for COVID-19. And there's all sorts of innovations happening all around us. People are very worried about this crisis and that crisis, and there's certainly lots of crises we need to be worried about. But I think the thing that can give our kids hope is that we are very innovative, and we seem to usually come up with a way to fix whatever problem, whatever crisis we're facing.
Yeah, that's what this book is about, and it even has innovative poodles that figure out, the Snoodle, the poodle, takes care of the problem as well. So, and even Sauer Krudelman, he gets innovative. Everybody in the story is pretty innovative. So, that's the message.
Yeah.
That's the message. And it's a hopeful message that, hey, we could figure our way out of anything if we put our heads to it.
Yeah. Now you are, I don't know if titan of industry is an appropriate term, but you're in the business world, and you're, as I recall, you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if many people necessarily associate business and finances and law with fun kids books.
Well, I actually didn't plan on writing kids books, and how this story also came about. I have this other book, Grown Up Guide to Effective Crankiness, the Crankosaurus Method, which I didn't plan to write either, but I wrote this book on crankiness, and so I'm writing. So after I wrote that book, I started writing all different. I continued to write, and I still have enough material for another effective guide on crankiness, because I get pretty cranky. So this story actually started out as a blog, Crankosaurus Snoodles, and then I thought I had that, and then I had Cinderella Crankosaurus, which I retell the story of Cinderella, and in that story, instead of her getting this big gown and the carriage and everything, and the pretty dress, she gets a megaphone, and she has a voice, and that's how she ends up with the prince. But the prince actually was dating Snow White for a while, and that didn't work out. She was living with 7 small little men, which was kind of weird, but, but anyway, he had this internet thing with Cinderella, and he was a frog at one point, and Cinderella's parents were turned into frogs. That's how he got to know Cinderella's parents. It's a kind of crazy story, but that was my other story that I was thinking about doing the book. But I wrote about Crankosaurus Noodles, and I guess with copyright and different things, it was easier to do a Snoodles book than the Cinderella story.
Interesting. That's I hope the copyright issues get cleared up, because I think the Cranky Cinderella story is going to be a lot of fun.
That would be a lot of fun. Yes, that's a lot of fun, because and it actually her parents, their last name is Wayne. They lived in Gotham City. They had a ruby red slipper factory where they made ruby red slippers in very special, and that's why the Wicked Witch tried to turn them into frogs, because she wanted the red slippers, and then her stepmom was Maisie. Her name was Maisie, Mrs. Maisie, and she had the marvelous Mrs. Maisie's Shoe Emporium, which wasn't so marvelous, but anyway. And she had 3 sisters, Stacey, Crazy, and Razy, whatever, like and they had long hair, like with puns. It just gets all involved. It's fun.
I don't know. You talk about writing about crankiness. I can't imagine you being cranky, because you're just churning out all these fun stories.
I get cranky. No, I get cranky. I get cranky. And actually, another fun blog, I redid The Wizard of Oz. This was a blog, Spinning Your Wheel, Crankosaurus. And, you have the wizard. Well, they all came to see the wizard to get the scarecrow get a brain, and the Tin Man a heart, and the lion get courage, and and he gives them like little tchotchkes, like, oh, here's a piece of paper, and they all get annoyed. You're spinning my wheel, just, and at the end I changed it. The lion gets to eat the wizard. And, when you have the power of the pen and you can have I was so happy because that wizard kind of annoyed me. He needed to be eaten, and I had the lion eat the wizard. And of course, once he eats the wizard, he gets courage.
What kind of conversations do you think families could have if they were reading Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles together?
Well, I think they could have a conversation about different things that they could create, or just imagination, things about imagination. So because people are cranky with the Krautmobile, there's all sorts of other inventions. There's the toothpaste mobile, the bean mobile. You see a picture of pizza and French fries mobile, which is a hot dog mobile. And then there's another picture. My illustrator is great, where he opens up the Noodle Art Museum, and you see all these different stores that are noodle centric, like Smack the Cheese, where you get mac and cheese ice cream. So it's all about imagination and how delightful it is when you could imagine things that you could create stories, and also it's creating a story with imagination. It just encourages kids to have imagination, what you could create, even if you can't invent the next Snoodle-mobile, that, with your imagination, what you could create just with that. I wrote a blog, again, on crankiness. You can't make this stuff up, Crankosaurus. And the whole point of that was, like, people always say when crazy stuff happens, is, you can't make this stuff up. And I'm saying it's actually the opposite. What did you do today? Oh, I did the same old thing. I got up, I had my coffee, I went to work, I came home, I watched TV, I went to sleep. That would be something you can't make this stuff up. That's really boring. That's incredibly boring. You get into that rut. So I'm saying, why don't you, to get out of that rut, and you get cranky too, if you go through every single day where you can't make this stuff up. So the response is, how about making stuff up? And just finding how much fun it is, where you feel like you can make this stuff. The crazy stuff, that's the stuff you can make stuff up. Mm-hmm. So it's the exact opposite. So again, that's like a message even in this book.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, tell everybody, please, where they can go to find out more about you and find out more about Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles.
Well, this book, I have a website that it even has, like, you go onto the Snoodle page, there's even a big art gallery with all the different pictures from the book. You scroll down, it's really, really great. My website, StephenJosephAuthor.com. Where you could find out about all three books and everything about crankiness on my blog, on my website, which I still continue to find. It's amazing. Every time I think, that's it, I'm done with it, then something else comes up, which is fun. And then this book, it's now available on my publisher, MascotBooks.com. But it's on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and the rest of the world, May 3rd release date.
Awesome. Well, we've had a great time speaking to the author of Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles, Stephen Joseph. Hey, Stephen, thanks so much for being back with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Before we invite Amalia Huffman into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram. If you're on Twitter, it's at Gently Magic. Be sure to check out our Reading With Your Kids Pinterest page, and we would be delighted if you would visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can sign up for our free newsletter. You can also use the contact button at the top of the page to let us know what we're doing right, let us know what we could be doing better, and let us know who you would like to hear on the podcast. Joining us right now from right outside the New York City area, our guest is returning to the podcast. We had so much fun with her in the past. We wanted to have her back on to celebrate her brand new book. It's called Masha Munching. Please welcome back to the show, Amalia Huffman. Hey, Amalia, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I am wonderful.
So I'll tell you a little bit about the story.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, the story started, I must have something for goats. I grew up in Israel. And in the summer, we used to spend our time in a farm. And, I grew up in Jerusalem. We really didn't see that many animals, except there used to be a donkey that used to bring the groceries. And his name was Menashe. But when we went to the farm, there were goats there. And they always fascinated me because they're just so cute. They're not cute, but they're like silly, they're like kids. They do all these things that you don't want them to do, and then they do the thing. It's like fun. So I kind of had a thing for goats. And so I kind of had this Masha in my head. And I always brought her to storytelling, to schools and places like that. And so all of a sudden I was walking one day in a park, and I just kind of had this iteration, Masha Munching. And it just didn't come out of my head. It's this combination of words. And then I said, okay, Masha Munching, what is she munching on? Is she munching on a sock? Is she munching on this? Is she munching on that? I couldn't really figure out what Masha would munch on. And that was the beginning of the story, really. I remember as a little girl, we used to go to this farm. And there were goats there, and they would try to nibble on our shoes and kind of pull our shoelaces, and they tried to nibble on our clothes. And then the idea came to me to write a story about a goat that really loves food. But she lives in a farm. And I started the book with end paper that just says names that you make when you eat, like chomp, chomp, and yum, yum, and belp, and all these kind of names. And then I started the story by explaining what her conflict. And her conflict is that everybody in the farm loves to eat the animal food that the farm has, which is hay and wood and splashy water. But Masha, on the other hand, Masha doesn't like that. It's not that she doesn't like that. She gets bored with farm food. Mm-hmm. So one day, I gave her some human characteristic. She goes and she puts on her prettiest outfit. And she goes out to explore. Masha goes out of the farm. And she is looking for something better to eat. And as she looks and looks and looks, Masha goes and finds a restaurant. And in the restaurant, there is a waiter, and he has a very, very exclusive menu. And on the menu, he offers Masha the day's specials: baguette, onion soup, creme brulee, chocolate souffle, and sparkling water. But what excites Masha more is not what he offers, but what she sees. And what she sees is really a basket. She sees a basket to put in the baguettes and the breads and everything that is offered by the restaurant. But Masha remembers that on the farm, she ate straw. And so she's not really interested in what's in the basket. She's interested in the basket itself. Like somebody who is completely unconventional and doing everything wrong in a restaurant. Yeah. And I started thinking what it was like bringing my kids to a restaurant. And I remember my grandson, he was very, very young, and we brought him to a restaurant, and he was on a high chair. They gave him like a high chair, and he threw everything on the floor, and politely they asked us to leave. So this is really a little bit what happens to Masha. She's really good, and she's trying very hard to be as fancy as could be. And what happens is Masha goes back home. And I didn't just want to leave it that Masha goes back home and she said, oh, I ate all this great food, because I felt that that's not really a satisfying story. Mm-hmm. So I wanted her to give back something back to the community. And I struggled with it for a long time. What could Masha bring back to the community? I didn't want her to carry food with her because she finished everything. She finished the table and she finished the basket. And nothing else really seems like food to her. So I had Masha walked and walked and walked. Before long, she was back home. Welcome home, Masha, the farm animals called. You are just in time for dinner. So now, Masha is chewed and chomped, gobbled and gnawed, slurped the splashy water. I used a lot of what you call onomatopoeia, words that make the sound of like chomp and crunch and things like that. And then she goes, burp, until her tummy was nice and full. And what happens at the end is that, of course, all the animals love her big noise. That's the whole fun of eating with friends. The message of the story is that you can get something better somewhere else, but eating with friends make the tastiest meal. Yeah. And what she did is she now has her own bistro to serve food for her friends. What she's doing is she's taking the food that the waiter showed her on his menu, and she's now making her own menu that will fit to her friend. So she has dishes like table wood boule, brunch, hay souffle, wood and hay farm salad, and slurp and burp drink. And all the animals just love it. And that is what she's giving back to the community. And they go, thank you, Masha. Oh, no. Now, I didn't want to leave the baked penguin alone out there in his fancy restaurant, because Masha actually invites him. When she leaves, she invites him to join the farm, to come to the farm and see how much fun it could be. So on the end page on this side, you can see that the waiter is joining, and he's bringing sparkling water.
Wonderful.
For all the animal to eat. In a way, I felt the message of the story was that you should explore. Mm-hmm. You should get out of your surrounding. But if you feel that you want to come back, you might have a lot to give back to the society or to friends that you really love. And in the last page, Masha also have a cookbook, and it says cooking with friends, for friends. So that was the message of the story, that we do need to explore. Yeah. But we also, sometimes when you explore, you go out of your way, people leave their families, their countries, but then there is something else that they can give back to the people they love the most.
Yeah. Neat. That's very neat, very neat. Yeah. I love that message that no matter how far we roam, we're always welcome back at home.
Yeah, and not just welcome, we are giving more to the people we come back for. It's also the idea of doing something for nothing. You take branches and you take this, and I started thinking, well, maybe they can have fancy names, and she's in a way learned something. Mm-hmm. She learned how to put together a menu, and she learned how to serve her friends, and she wrote a cookbook. Yeah. And so I did the illustrations in a technique where I actually cut each part. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of assembled it together. So when you look at the real book, and then I use a board, and everything gets attached to the board. Yeah. And then it gets photographed, and I have a very good photographer. His name is Ira Wunder, and I gave him credit in the book. for putting up with me and photographing everything. And that's how we did it. So when I photograph it, I can decide how much three-dimensionality I want to have.
Oh, super.
And so that the shadow plays a great part in the image itself.
Right.
So it makes it look like the image is popping out of the page.
Mm-hmm.
I always love those books, these books that you open and then things pop out.
Yeah.
What I came up with, people say to me, well, how come it's three-dimensional? Because it is. So I can take Masha and I can move her this way and she can open her mouth and she can eat a piece of paper like that.
Uh-huh.
Or so I can then play with her and give her more movement.
Right.
So it doesn't look that stiff.
Right. What a neat activity families could do. Take from that after they read Masha Munching and then create their own kind of cut and paste art.
Yeah, that's what I usually tell kids that, and I do it with my grandchildren and kids that I read to or perform in front of, that really it's a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be as complicated as what I do.
Amalia, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Masha Munching and find out more about you. Is there a place on the web they can find you?
Yes, I have a very extensive website, simply www.amaliahoffman.com. And they can also find me on Facebook. In my website, there is a whole section just about my books. And then there is another section called storytelling, where you can see images of me playing with my puppets, reading my stories with my puppets, because I have a puppet for each book I make of the main character. They can see coloring pages that they can download for free. There is also a teacher guide with the fun facts about goats, and teacher guides for all my other stories.
Well, we've had a really fun time speaking with the author of Masha Munching, Amalia Hoffman. Hey, Amalia, thanks so much for being with us again.
Thank you so much, Jake, for hosting me. Bye-bye.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Kerry Gallagher. Kerry's returning to the show to talk about digital wellness and how we can make sure our kids are healthy and happy in this age of technology. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Chris, we're going to start by thanking our guest, Stephen Joseph. Please be sure to check out Snoodles, Kidoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. Also want to thank Amalia Hoffman. Please be sure to check out Masha Munching. I want to thank my team. A special thanks to Skylar Strauss for editing the show today. Also, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for telling your friends about the show. Thank you so much for visiting readingwithyourkids.com. But most of all, thank you so much for making the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.